assigning delegate permissions. And you can see in my Outlook there I've got the ribbon bar turned off, so I'm just going to turn it back on. And just to make sure that we are in fact working with Office 2010, right then, delegates, if you go down to Home, so from scratch go to File, Account Settings, Delegate Access, and anyone familiar with earlier versions of Outlook, this will look pretty similar. You can pick who you want to grant access, calendar access to, off the global address list, and simply add them in. Make sure you untick this box. Why it's ticked by default, I do not know. It's fine if you've got a secretary and you want her to get all your meeting requests, but it's not fine for just about everybody else. You can change, it's not very granular, you can have reviewer, author and editor at this level. Remember, keep that box unticked. Unless you want your delegate to get all your meeting requests, of course. And there you will see your delegates listed. If you have multiple ones, you'll see them in the list there. You can, should you so wish, send somebody an email to say that you are granting them access to your calendar. If you go to Calendar View, make sure your ribbon bar's on, Share Calendar, and you'll see Allow recipients to view your calendar. Pick the level of access that you want to grant them. And pick the user you want to grant access to, and you can send them an email. Confirm that you want to actually give them access to your calendar. So I've jumped across to that user, Tommy Tester account. And if we look in his inbox, you'll see there's an email from me to say that I've shared my calendar with him. And if you so wish, you can click the open button above to directly open the calendar after a couple of seconds when it refreshes. There you go. That's user 1 now looking at my calendar. Now if you want to be a little bit more granular with the permissions that you are assigning, you can assign direct permissions. If you right click the calendar in question, select Properties and go to the Permissions tab, you can add a user in here to pick somebody off their global address list, doesn't matter who it is, and add that on. And now you can pick at a bit more of a granular level exactly what you want to grant access to that user. So there's multiple sections in here. There's one for read, there's one for write. You can get to the same thing by clicking on the calendar permissions button at the top once you're in calendar view. It's identical. You'll see there's the administrator that we added in earlier. So you can be a little bit more granular or just tick edit all if you so wish. With everything turned on, you become a publishing editor anyway. Now for default permissions, you can see instead of adding a user in, everybody has default access. And by default, everybody can see your free busy time, so they can invite you. If you click Full Details Reviewer on there, then everybody will have access to your calendar, which is probably the way in most businesses you want it set up. Now, I'm logged on as user 1 here. if you want to open another user calendars that you have been granted access to, you go to File, Open, Other Users folder, change the drop down to Calendar, and you can pick the user you want off the global address list unless you've got it cached. So user 1 wants to open my calendar, which across the work week, and you'll see, because I've given him permissions, he can open my calendar. He can turn it off, turn it back on, he can turn it on off. You can have multiple calendars open at any one time. And if he wanted to remove me from that view, he can just delete the calendar from there. He still has access, he still has permissions to open again if he wants, but it's just not on the quick pick list. Now if you want to open somebody else's calendar and find that you don't have permissions, you can request permissions from Calendar View. Go to Share Calendar, select the level of access you would like, and untick that one and tick Request Permissions to view recipient's calendar. Search for the user in question. That's me requesting access to user 1's calendar off the global address list, and that'll send him an email requesting access. So what I'll do now is I'll log off and I'll switch across to user 1's account, and we'll see what they see after you've requested permissions. Okay, if we look at user 1's inbox now, you will see there's an email from me requesting access, and you can choose whether to allow or deny. If you're watching the video earlier, this will be familiar. Okay, I've now given Pete Long permission to open user 1's calendar, so let's log on to Pete Long and make sure that we can open it. There's my email saying that I have been granted access. Now I can click the Open This Calendar button there, or I can go to File, Open, Other User, pick him off the list, he's right at the top, and I can open his calendar directly from there. Not much in it, but I can open it. And that's us. Thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to come and visit us at www.petenetlive.com.
It seems like there's so much to do and so little time to do it with. Microsoft must have realized that many of us are pulled in multiple directions when they added the ability to work with multiple calendars in Outlook 2010. We're going to start by going to the calendar area in Outlook, and we do that by clicking the calendar icon in the navigation bar. You can see I've already created one calendar, a personal one, to house all of my personal life. And I could switch between the calendars by clicking on one calendar and deselecting another. Now that worked pretty well, and I'd like to set up a few more calendars. So this time I'm going to go back to Calendar. I'm going to do a right click on that calendar and create a new one. And I'd like this calendar to cover all my business appointments. So I'm going to call it quite simply Appointments. And I click OK. You can create as many calendars as you need. So I'm now going to create another calendar. And once again, I do a right click on Calendar and go down to New Calendar, and I'm going to call this calendar Office Meetings, because I find that I get in trouble if I don't show up. Finally, I'm going to create a calendar for the office holidays, because that's something I want to make sure that I don't miss. So I go back to Calendar and create another new calendar, and I'm going to call this one simply Office Holidays. Now that works pretty well so far. But one thing bothers me. It's a little bit confusing, and I'd like to actually group those calendars together. Well, guess what? Outlook lets me group calendars. So I can do that by going up to the My Calendars area and right-clicking, and I see the option New Calendar Group. So I'm going to make a new group of business calendars. I'm going to click New Calendar Group and call this group Business. Now to add calendars to the business group, I just need to drag them into that group. So I'm going to take Office Holidays, drag it down to Business, the Office Meetings, drag it to Business, and also the Appointments. From this point forward, if I want to look at all my business calendars together, I can simply click the Business checkbox. I'm now seeing all the calendars at the same time. Now sometimes Outlook will automatically change the view so that you can see all your information at one time. For example, if I add in the personal calendar, it now switches me over to the schedule view to make it easier to schedule appointments. Now there's a couple of other things that I can do with my calendars. For example, I just don't like the name personal for my personal calendar. It just doesn't have a lot of zest to it. So I'm going to give that personal calendar a little bit more pizzazz by giving it a right click and going down to color and giving it a nice perky shade of yellow. There, that's better. But I might want to take this exercise a little further and rename that calendar. So this time I'm going to do a right click on the personal calendar, rename calendar. I'm going to rename this calendar to Fun Stuff to remind me of all the fun stuff that there is outside of my business world. Now one of the nice things about having multiple calendars is that I can superimpose the two calendars on top of each other. In this exercise, I'd like to see my work week, and right now I'm seeing them side by side. So I see that I have certain personal responsibilities and business responsibilities. You notice this left pointing arrow. What I'm going to do is give it a click, and I'm now seeing my two calendars overlaid on top of each other. And you notice my regular calendar items are in blue, and my fun stuff activities are in yellow. And I can see when I've scheduled something for the same time slot. Now I can add additional calendars to the overlay by selecting the calendar and then adding it to the overlay. If I want to separate the calendars, I can either close the calendar by clicking the X, or I can divide the calendar by clicking that overlay button again, which is now pointing to the right. Although Outlook can't do your chores for you, it can help keep you a bit more organized, and you'll never have to worry about scheduling more than one thing at a time.